right, so we got yet another ruling coming down from our right-wing reactionary Supreme Court, this time specifically relating to the separation of church and state as outlined by the Constitution, which it seems like they're fully intending on dismantling. So, here from Common Dreams, Julia Conley, we got a great breakdown. She says, Supreme Court takes a wrecking ball to the separation of church and state with this recent prayer ruling. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the details here. She says, a U.S. Supreme Court ruling on Monday offered another example of the court's conservative supermajority continuing its politicized agenda, said the head of one of the nation's largest teachers unions, as the decision overturned decades of precedent which prohibited educators from leading students in religious displays. So what are the specifics on this? She says, in Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, which concerned a coach who led prayers on the 50-yard line of a Washington State high school's football field, the court's right-wing majority ruled that the coach's prayers were protected under the First Amendment and that school officials who asked him to stop were not acting in the interest of the nation's bedrock laws separating church and state. And they say the decision comes just 2 decades after the court reaffirmed that prayer in schools violated the separation of church and state, ruling in Santa Fe Independent School District versus the Department of Education in 2000. And they say observers noted that the case was complicated by the fact that lawyers for Joe Kennedy, who was the coach of this football team in Bremerton, Washington, claimed that Kennedy prayed privately and silently, despite the fact that a photo included in Sotomayor's opinion showed the coach leading the students in prayer. So, I mean, listen, this entire case, the way that they were ruling on this case, the whole precedent that they were using was that this coach was operating in a private capacity and was doing this silently, like off to the side, away from all of the students, and wasn't doing this in a coercive manner. But you can see the picture here. I mean, we literally have a photograph of exactly what this was looking like. You have a coach who is wearing the, school affirmed uniforms of this football team alongside the players, who is on the 50-yard line, assuming this is like right after a game, basically, and leading them in prayer. Okay, this is somebody who works for the state. This is somebody who works for the government as a public school representative, and he is on the 50-yard line leading these players in religious prayer. Specifically, this is a Christian prayer that he is leading, and this is obviously a violation of the separation of church and state. It doesn't matter if he's, outside on a football field leading his players, which are also students, or whether or not he's in a classroom. That's just, nitpicking back and forth. And again, the entire premise of the way that they were ruling on this was based on a lie. It was based on the false idea that this guy was not coercing his players into joining him in prayer. We had multiple players who were on this team who have openly come out and said that they felt like they were being coerced into doing it. And yeah, I mean, obviously, if you've ever played on a sports team, regardless of what type of sport it is, and you've had a coach who would be doing something like this, obviously it's going to lead to potentially less playing time, or being feeling like you're ostracized from the rest of the team, whatever. It's obviously having a coercive effect if you're going to do this with a subset of the players, and force, I guess, Muslims or Jews or atheists to go off and do their own thing while you're leading this prayer. I mean, obviously the coercive element of this is right there plain to see. But again, the entire ruling that this conservative majority was making here to get rid of this precedent, basically, of separating of church and state and banning public school representatives from leading students in prayer, the whole basis of that was that he was supposedly doing this privately and away from all of the students, which is obviously just a brazen lie, according to the photograph that we have here. But they continue here with more details, saying last year, a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit found that Kennedy's lawyers had created a deceitful narrative about the case, which the 6 right-wing justices just accepted on Monday, and Judge Milan D. Smith, Jr. of the Ninth Circuit found that Kennedy prayed out loud in the middle of the football field, surrounded by players, members of the opposing team, parents, a local politician, and members of the news media, with television cameras recording the event, all of whom had been advised of Kennedy's intended actions through the local news and on social media. And meanwhile, Kennedy's team claimed the coach offered his prayers quietly while the students were otherwise occupied. Does this look like he's doing it quietly with the other students occupied? I mean, no, obviously not. But they say, as the majority wrote in its opinion on Monday. So again, the entire ruling here, I mean, how the fuck could anybody possibly take this Supreme Court seriously as an institution? I mean, they're basing their entire ruling here off of a straight up lie that he wasn't doing this in a public or a coercive manner. But, I guess what else could you expect from this Supreme Court that we have in place right now? But finally, they finish off here saying the Bremerton School Board asked Kennedy to stop involving students in his prayers in 2015, saying his statute stature as a leader and a role model meant that the students felt forced to participate, whatever their religion, and or whether they wanted to do it or not, according to the New York Times. And again, the coercive element of this is so fucking obvious. It's in your face. If you've ever been a part of a sports team, then you understand that it's not that easy to just, after a football game, walk away from the rest of the team, walk away from your coach as they're continuing to do team events like this publicly in front of everybody in the middle of the fucking 50-yard line after a game. So, I mean, listen, straight up and down, I don't know how anybody could possibly have respect for the Supreme Court as an institution. They are obviously acting in a political capacity. They're not independent. They're not above the whims of, the political, leanings of the country, or whatever the political leanings are of the institutions, the politicians who put them in place in the Supreme Court in the first place for political reasons. I mean, this Supreme Court has at this point lost all of its legitimacy. We've seen recent polling that's come out from the American people that literally right now the Supreme Court has a lower standing in the eyes of the American people than basically at any point throughout history. And it's not surprising why. I mean, with all the talk of conservatives coming out and pushing back against supposed left-wing judicial activists like establishing Roe v. Wade as a precedent, I mean, what the fuck would you call these? These are conservative judicial activists who are not interpreting the Constitution as an originalist interpretation, because obviously if you were to do that, you would accept that public school teachers, representatives of the government, should not be allowed to engage in this type of behavior. So they're obviously not interpreting the Constitution in an originalist way. But on top of that, they're obviously also just being judicial activists, and they are pushing their own agenda. They are pushing their own ideology, just completely disregarding all precedents that came before them, and disregarding the Constitution. But again, this is just the latest in a series of rulings that we have gotten from the Supreme Court recently. We had obviously the Roe v. Wade decision that just came down last week. On top of that, we also have the ruling on the Miranda rights, which basically said that it will make it damn near impossible to sue police officers who fail to read you your Miranda rights. That's the classic, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to you before any questions are asked, etc. Those are your Miranda rights, and obviously, enabling cops to not read those out to suspects as they're being questioned, as they're being interrogated. That's going to lead to disastrous effects and violations of people's rights in this country. But this was just another one that the Supreme Court was rolling back. We also had this 6-3 ruling. Court strikes down New York's concealed carry law. So basically saying that courts have a right under the Roe v. Wade overturning, that states have a right to force pregnancies on women, even in the case in many of these states in rapes and incest circumstances. So apparently the state has a right to determine exactly what is going to happen with a woman's body, but they don't have a right to determine gun laws to prevent people from getting concealed carry permits. So, obvious contradictions there. There's no consistency whatsoever to their interpretation of the Constitution. We also had this ruling, which I did an entire video on yesterday, in West Virginia versus EPA, which is, again, just a part of this decades-long project by conservatives within this country to dismantle the entire administrative state. It's not just the EPA, it's also the SEC, it's also every single federal government agency which Congress has delegated authority to in order to, protect the American people from predatory capitalism. And yet you have the Supreme Court, which is likely going to be ruling on the side of West Virginia in this case, completely dismantling the ability of the Environmental Protection Agency to actually do their job and be a check on these massive fossil fuel companies, these chemical companies, etc., to prevent them from destroying our water supplies, destroying the environment, and leading to catastrophic effects from climate change. So you had this one as well, which is going to have massive, far-reaching consequences. But you also had this one, which I also covered in a video just a couple of weeks ago. The Supreme Court gives lawsuit immunity to Border Patrol agents who violate the Constitution and violate your Fourth Amendment protections against unlawful and unreasonable search and seizure. This case was centered around a guy who basically was physically assaulted and had his property invaded by a Border Patrol agent who did not have a warrant. And, after that, the Supreme Court rules that he is not allowed to sue them for those actions. So, top to bottom, what the fuck is the Supreme Court? This is not something that is safeguarding the rights of the minority in this country. It is something that is basically an institution that represents a tiny fraction of the extreme right in this country and is imposing their will on the rest of us. I mean, that's what the Supreme Court is. And so, you're left with a fundamental reality here. And also, I just wanted to include this one as well. This wasn't from the same session as a lot of these other rulings, but seems to be one that people forgot about. But yeah, just as a reminder, last year, this same Supreme Court ruled in favor of Nestle and Cargill. And I even believe that you had some liberal justices who are ruling on the same side of Nestle and Cargill, who basically said that you can't sue corporations because of their label as a corporation for using child slavery overseas, this case specifically in, I think it was the Ivory Coast over in Africa. So, I mean, listen, what the fuck are you supposed to interpret in terms of what the Supreme Court stands for? Not just this particular Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court broadly as we view it here in the United States and what it's supposed to be. I mean, if you want to get down to the fundamentals of this, number one, the Supreme Court's ability for judicial review, that it is non-existent in the Constitution. They basically just granted themselves the power of judicial review, which has been perpetuated since then. Now, basically, they've expanded their powers so much to the point where they are able to come out, say that it's not possible to hold corporations liable for child slavery, that Border Patrol agents are able to violate your constitutional rights, and you have no ability to sue them for that. They're dismantling the administrative state, the EPA, the SEC, etc. They are overturning abortion protections in this country, allowing states to violently and impose criminal punishments on women who are trying to seek healthcare in that instance. You also have, obviously, again, the Miranda rights ruling, and again, the New York concealed carry ruling. So, I mean, top to bottom, this is just a hijacked Supreme Court as an institution, doesn't deserve any respect. And so, I mean, what are we left with at the end of the day? We have Joe Biden coming out saying he's not in favor of expanding the Supreme Court. Kamala Harris came out yesterday and basically said the only solution is to vote in more Democrats, which not even sure how that's going to do anything to push us in the right direction if you're not willing to confront the power of the Supreme Court. And just as a reminder here, I mean, just to pull back from a historic example, it was back in the days of FDR and his presidency where the Supreme Court was trying to rule that a lot of the things that he was trying to accomplish legislatively were unconstitutional. And what did he do? Did he just bow his head and say, well, please vote for me more in the next election? No, he confronted the Supreme Court directly, and he basically threatened them with expanding the Supreme Court and gutting their power, specifically relating to things like judicial review. And the Supreme Court backed down, and they said that those things were constitutional. They literally just changed their minds. So, I mean, people got to get a little bit imaginative and look throughout history and see, how Abraham Lincoln as well just straight up ignored the Supreme Court when they were trying to safeguard slavery. I mean, there's plenty of different instances throughout history where the Supreme Court has been acting in a reactionary capacity to roll back human rights and rights that are protected by the Constitution in this country. And you've had presidents before who have stood up to them, but basically we're left with a Sleepy Joe, feckless, spineless coward as the president and the leader of the Democratic Party. And you have a leadership class and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi who are not willing to do fucking anything. They care much more about the precious sanctity of the Supreme Court as an institution than they care about protecting your fundamental rights in this country.